Thank you, Madam President. First, I'd like to ask unanimous consent that the Senate be in a period of morning business with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each.
Without objection.
Madam President, I come to the floor today to urge the swift confirmation for Tony Blinken to be the Secretary of State. Like we saw with Avril Haines yesterday and moving towards Lloyd Austin today, we need to hold a floor vote on Mr. Blinken's nomination urgently. Mr. Blinken is well known to the Senate, having previously been confirmed as Deputy Secretary of State, having served as the Deputy National Security Advisor, and of course, as the Staff Director of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee before that. He's superbly qualified to be the Secretary of State, and his knowledge and thoughtfulness were on display during 5 hours of testimony earlier this week. And since then, he's been asked to respond to hundreds of questions. As a matter of fact, he has had an inordinate number of questions that have been put to him for the record. He had nearly over half a hundred before his hearing. He has had from a couple of our colleagues nearly 600 questions, including multiple parts to those questions. And to my knowledge, he has largely answered them all, notwithstanding the size, the magnitude of it. Now, I have been, since I arrived in this institution, one of the big advocates of the prerogatives of each and every individual senator and of the institution, so I take a back step to no one. But there's a difference between prerogatives and prerogatives that are abused, which in essence are for the purpose of ultimately going ahead.
The Senate will be in order.
Which are for the purpose not of seeking information, but for the purpose of delaying a nomination. Now, I appreciate that Senator Risch, the present chairman of the committee, has been working with me to try to accelerate Mr. Blinken's nomination to the floor. But I would ask my colleagues, particularly those on the committee, to join he and I in an effort to bring one of the important national security positions in our government to the floor for a vote. I don't think we should be leaving this weekend without a vote for the Secretary of State. He is the right person to repair and restore our alliances, to rebuild and renew the State Department, to reinvigorate the relationship between the Department and Congress, something that I think Republicans and Democrats alike have agreed, have soured dramatically. His testimony, his opening statement, his answers to questions show that he will be a working partner with this institution. But obviously, confirming Mr. Blinken is not just about the nominee himself. It's about doing what the American people expect and the Constitution requires, providing advice and consent to ensure that national security officials are in office in a timely manner. We're facing challenges in every corner of the world. The world is on fire. From Iran to Russia to Venezuela to global challenges that define our times and defy borders like COVID, migration, and climate change. We can't afford delaying to put Mr. Blinken in office. We can't allow the State Department to be rudderless. If we don't have leadership, we can't be sure that China or Russia and others won't fill the vacuum as they have for the last several years, or do something that is adverse to our national and economic security. Imagine that there's a hostage deal to be had, as I believe there is, and you can't have another country call the Secretary of State because the Secretary of State doesn't exist. Imagine if there are tensions between two countries that affect our national interests. You don't have a Secretary of State to call his counterpart in those countries to seek to ease the tension, to remove the threat. Imagine if President Biden needs to have a Secretary of State engage in the world, in some part of the world, to stop a conflict, to open an opportunity, to prevent an unintended consequence. We don't have that person. And we cannot expect the president to pick up the phone in each and every instance in the world as he's trying to deal with COVID at home and the economic crisis that follows on from that. That's what the Secretary of State does. So Mr. Blinken also, finally, is not just critical to addressing challenges abroad. We have to acknowledge what the role of Secretary of State here is at home. If we remember what just happened back on the 6th, 3 of the first 4 officials in the line of succession, the Vice President, the Speaker of the House, and the President pro tem of the Senate, were in the Capitol when domestic terrorists breached the building. And every day we learn more details about this heinous attack, including that the terrorists, some of who were chanting, "Hang Mike Pence," came within a minute or so of a potential face-to-face encounter with Vice President Pence. Thank God, through the quick thinking and heroics of our Capitol Police and other law enforcement, those 3 remained unscathed. But if something had happened, it is the Secretary of State that is fourth in line of succession to the President of the United States. Leaving the office vacant is irresponsible. It is irresponsible in that regard. It is irresponsible in terms of something happening in the world and not having a Secretary of State who could work to deal with it so that we could preserve our national security, promote our national interests, and stop something, an unintended consequence from happening. Mr. Blinken has the qualifications. The challenges facing our country call for him to be confirmed, and I hope the Senate does not leave here tomorrow until he is confirmed. With that, Madam President, I yield the floor.
The senior senator from Oklahoma.
As there's consent, I'll be recognized for such time I shall consume.
Without objection, so ordered.
Let me just say to my good friend from New Jersey how wholeheartedly I agree with him. I've known Tony Blinken for a long period of time. I've